My name is Irene, and this is Rebecca Hunter from Little Introvert Expressions Studio. We are going to show you this evening how to make a Make with Mom watercolor palette for Mother's Day.
Little Introvert Expressions in 2020. I have been a painter, a graphic designer, many things within the arts since I was in high school. Today we're going to be working on watercolors. A lot of what I do with my little business is watercolor greeting cards. I also have an online presence. You can follow me at Little Introvert Expressions on Facebook or on my website www.littleintrovertexpressions.art. And so today we're going to share some of what we do with you, and we're going to be making these watercolor palettes. Next class, following once you receive your watercolor palettes back, we're going to learn a little bit about watercolors. We'll learn to do a mixing class, how to make different colors, and then we'll paint a pretty picture together.
In your kit, you have a piece of canvas. What you want to do is find a clean work surface and tape it out flat on your tabletop. And this is just to protect your table and prevent your clay from sticking. So you'll also find a piece of pipe which we're going to use as a rolling pin. And push the clay away from yourself. And I'm going to pick it up and I'm going to flip it around and I'm going to push the clay away again. And what we are trying to do is get our clay the thickness of our pointer finger. We don't want the clay to be too thick, because when the clay is too thick, it holds a lot of moisture, and moist clay going into the kiln can cause your piece to blow up. And also we don't want your clay to be too thin, because a thin, flat piece of clay can crack easily, and all your work would be for nothing. I'm just going to work this a little bit more. Also on my desk, and something that you'll need to get for yourself, is just a small bowl of water. When we work with clay, water is the glue. So anything we're sticking, we're going to use water, but also any edges, we're going to take our finger and we're going to smooth those. Because although the clay, when it's damp, our edges are soft, but when we fire them, we can get some really rough edges. So we're just going to take a little, dip our fingers in the water like that and go around the edges, just to make sure that everything is nice and smooth, top and bottom. So I'm being the heavy in this demonstration, and in a minute, Rebecca is going to come in and show you different designs that you can make to create your palette.
Okay, when you're making your watercolor palette itself, you want to make sure you have a decent amount of wells. So I have two different samples here. This one we've filled with some paint, like we will do later with your palettes when we return them to you. This design here, I've added a section for a paintbrush. The lowest amount of wells I would want to go would be 5. And you're going to want a larger well on any design in order to take your colors, mix them, and make new colors with them. So this design here, I have the little wells in a circle all the way around, and the center would be your mixing well. On this one, we've got the 5 wells along the bottom, a section for your paintbrush, and then your mixing well is up on top. When you take your clay, once it's rolled out, flattened in the shape you want, because this is up to you. You can make it anything you want. You could have a square, a triangle, however you would prefer it to look in the end, that is completely up to you. I like to make the wells with my thumbs. If you have little fingers, you may want to grab a spoon, and just any spoon from your kitchen would help with that. If you are going to use your fingers, I always take the water and make sure your finger's wet first, because you don't want the clay to stick to your finger. Then decide where you want to start your wells from. So I'm going to do a circular pattern like this one here, And my first well would go right there. And as you see, you want to make sure that you smooth it out. If you think it's starting to stick to your finger a little bit, get a little bit more water and make sure there's no rough edges. And you want the circle to be about 1 inch in diameter. This one's a little oval. I kind of like the shape of ovals on mine. And you want to go down far enough that you can have a little bit of paint sitting below the level line of the top of your palette. So take your water, put in your thumbprints, or use your spoon, whichever you prefer and whichever seems to work the easiest for you. Sometimes this is not the chosen method. Some people also just don't like putting their thumbs in the clay like that. I'm gonna do all the outside wells first, and then we'll come to the middle after. And you don't want to start decorating your palette until you've got the wells in, because you could end up going in afterwards, trying to put in your wells and destroying the design that you liked. Just a few more here, and I'm making sure that every one of them doesn't have any little edges of clay sticking up, that they're all completely smooth, because once those are fired, those little clay bits, even though they look really small, are going to be sharp and prickly. And you don't want those little catches on your clay palette. You want it to be nice and smooth in the end. So if you do find any little pieces along the rest of your palette, just smooth it out with a bit of water. And once you've got all your wells in, go back, take a look over them, smooth them out a little bit, and then look at where you'd like your mixing section. So in here, like I said, I'm doing the circular style. I'm actually going to use my finger to draw the circle that I want for my mixing well. And this is where all the colors that we're going to learn to make will be added and created in. And once again, using my thumb and my fingers, I want to create it. This one can be more shallow than the others, because you don't need to have paint sitting in such a large amount in the mixing section. You just want it low enough that when you add your water, because with watercolors, there's going to be little puddles. Each one of these little wells will end up with little puddles. You want to have enough space that your little puddle will not run into the rest of your colors, because then we'll have a muddled mess. And I'm just going to clean up the edges there. And once you've got all your wells in, your mixing section in, that's the one we get to decide what we want to put on it. What kind of design would you like? Most households have little things with little designs. Maybe it's your favorite little Brett that has a butterfly on it or something like that. And then every now and then you have someone like my mother who has a really fancy rolling pin with a design imprint that you can roll right across the palette and leave the whole palette with a nice imprinted design. And that's what was done here with this one. The whole palette had a design just rolled across it. But little items like this around your house that might have ridges, forks, anything with a texture that you can find around home can be used to make designs along the edges. So I'm going to roll this one all along the edge and give it a border. And we want to leave a nice matching design all the way around. And you can put as many little images as you want. Maybe you have a little stamp that you really like at home that you'd like to put in between the different wells. And you can also I like to take the end of a paintbrush and just draw little designs into it. When you get clay on the end, make sure you pull it off, roll it up, just set it aside. Add some squiggles in between. And the most important thing before returning them to us is you do need to find a spot to put your name. I don't suggest lifting it up to write your name on the bottom. I like to incorporate my name somewhere on the top. When you lift it up and try and write underneath, because they're wide and spread out, it can often fold in on itself, and then you're going to have to start all over again, re-roll it and roll it back out, which is not a problem because it's fun, right? So I'm just going to inscribe my name right along the edge of the bowl. And then once we're done that, we can get them ready to pack up to be picked up for firing. Okay, I'm gonna take the paper plate that I have found. I have a bunch of these at home left over. It's been a while since we've had picnics. When you lift up the pallet, make sure to support the bottom. You don't wanna lose the middle of your pallet. You can lay it either in a plate. If your pallet's bigger, that's okay. Flip the plate over and set one in between each pallet. Then lift up your pallet, slide it in, and with just a loose tie on the end, you can then take any box, a pizza box would work, if you've ordered something recently online, we're all ordering stuff these days, grab something that your pallet will fit nicely and you don't want the edges to pull up at all because it will ruin the pallet over time. And just close it up, set it aside, and leave it ready for pickup.